Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us for our webinar this morning. My name is Gabriela Hoffman, and I am from the International Students and Programs Office. This morning, we are going to be presenting on U.S. academic expectations for graduate students here at UC San Diego. We are joined by a few guests here this morning. We have Paul Hadjiperes, an education specialist from the Engaged Teaching Hub at the Teaching and Learning Commons, and Amanda Bravold, who's the Assistant Director from Academic Integrity Office. So we're going to be giving you some insight into what to expect at the university setting at UC San Diego as a graduate student, give you some helpful resources, and leave some time at the end for questions. Do bear with us a little bit. We do have some really great interactive software that we're using to try to get a sense of the audience and kind of what you're feeling as you come into this experience. So there might be some switching screens back and forth. So just bear with us if there's a little bit of silence or going back and forth. Just know that that is going to happen. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Paul now, and he'll start his presentation.
Good morning, everyone. So my name is Paul Hadjiperes. I'm an educational specialist here at UCSD. As you can probably tell, I'm not from the United States myself, and had the pleasure of studying out here as an international student. So I kind of know where you are at this moment, and it is just truly a kind of a real privilege to have you all with us today as well. So thank you so much for joining us for this webinar, and yeah, I hope you find it useful. So let us go on. So I guess the first thing I really want to introduce is one of my colleagues, and this is Sanchit, and Sanchit is a PhD student here. And Sanchit, if you want to say hi and just tell them just for a couple of seconds about yourself, and then we'll crack on.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sanchit. I'm just starting my third year of grad school here. I'm a PhD student in astrophysics, and I'm here to answer any questions you might have about grad school.
Thank you, Sanchit. We're going to have a bit of time at the very end to get into some questions, and like I said, we'll have a little bit of technology that will allow some questions to be asked. But kind of really at this point, we would like you to kind of engage you at this point and try to get a little feel about where you are and how you're feeling. So if I could ask you just for a moment to open up, and you're very welcome to do this on your phone. So if you would like to go to www.menti.com, and once you've done that, you can do that on a phone, an iPad, a computer, anything with a connection. And once you've done that, if you could go ahead and put in the code 319588. So that's going to be put in the code 319588, and there should be a question, and you should be able to just type a word to just describe what is going on at this point of your graduate career here at UCSD, and we'll spend a moment trying to gather a little bit of that data. So we're just going to switch screens to try to look at that information now. So just bear with us for one moment, and then we'll connect with you back. Great. So sure, I can see that we've got about 40 people that are posting. And we're seeing things such as overwhelmed, excited. I'm pleased to see some peace going on in there as well. I can certainly see that we've got some jet-lagged individual being thrilled. Now, as you probably can see, the way that this technology works is that it's a word frequency counter. So some of the words that you and your peers are actually posting kind of in the most frequent rate, the word cloud gets larger. So excitedly nervous by the looks of it. Looks like awesome is also coming in there. Fantastic. So we've got about 110 of you. And as you're doing this, if you could just take a moment to reflect. So these words represent you, but if you look at the rest of them, this is another 113 of your fellow graduate students and where they are as well. So there's a lot, I guess really what this exercise is meant to show you is that you're not alone in this. There's lots of, there's lots of kind of various thoughts and ideas that are going on the same wavelength. I can see homesick is there. That is something we're going to talk about for a moment as well. So it looks like we've got about 117, and it looks like it's staying pretty 118, there we go, pretty static at that. So we're going to move on to the next part. But thank you very much for hosting. And we're going to switch our screens back. Great. So now that we've got a bit of an idea about how you're feeling, we just want to talk to you just for a couple of moments about culture. And this is a word cloud that was actually collected from some of your peers in past years. All right, so thank you for doing that activity, and you're kind of co-authoring this journey with us, because we're going to, with your permission, we're going to use some of the words that you've said, and we're going to share this next year in our orientation as well. So as you can see, worried, optimistic, and hopeful. So when we're talking about culture, you are coming to UCSD from a very rich and diverse backgrounds with lots and lots and lots of different experiences as well. And so we're incredibly lucky to have you here at UCSD joining us. Culture comes about in many different ways. And as you can see, some of Mandela's quotes at the end here, education is an incredibly powerful form of culture, a way of kind of changing the world and changing experiences. So we know that you are very diverse, and you're coming into UCSD, which has a culture of its own. And this is kind of where we wanted to talk to you about just for a moment. So now it would be lovely if you could turn to the person next to you and actually post. Unfortunately, you can't. So maybe for this particular activity, if I could ask you to go, if you still have your Mentimeter back up, this should switch seamlessly. So if I could ask you in just a second, when I switch over, if you could just post what country you are joining us from here at UCSD. So if you just give me 10 seconds just to switch back over to our Mentimeter, and then we will we'll go on to the next activity. Okay, so there should be a new Menti now. So if you could just take a moment and go ahead and just type in what country you're from. So welcome from Turkey, wonderful. India, Chile, Venezuela, Pakistan, Greece, Canada, Germany, Taiwan, Pakistan, Cuba. This is fantastic. So you're bringing all of your own experiences via education, your own experiences in life to this campus, and it's going to be incredibly rich. There's a lady or a gentleman from Greece, one of my own home country as well. My last name's Hadjipiris and my father's Greek. Excellent. The UK, pleasure. South Korea. So this is also incredibly important for us to, and we really appreciate you taking the time to post this, because this tells us a little bit, and maybe it can show you not only the experiences that you're bringing from your own home country here, but the real kind of rich diverseness in which your fellow graduate students are bringing as well. Very good. Okay. Thank you so much. We're going to switch back now, just for a moment, to the presentation. Saudi Arabia, excellent. Okay. So thank you very much for sharing that. And so on the surface here at UCSD, we have our academics. We have Geisel Library, which is a kind of quite a dominating feature of our landscape. As you can see from some of these pictures, we have a beautiful coastline. There's our very happy students jumping in front of the Geisel Library there. We are Tritons. That is a kind of an important part of our logo and our symbol. And there is a lot of school spirit here as well. And of course, graduation, which is something that is an incredible event, which you will be no doubt incredibly successful and looking forward to yourself. So just as a tiny bit of background, I'm really not going to spend a lot of the time here because as you are part of this now, so you know this is a quarter system school, and Sanchet's going to actually be talking a little bit more about that in a second. There's a lot of people here. There's 33,000. We're a research institution, a top research institution, which you're going to be adding to as well. So we have a lot of questions, and these questions we're gonna field these in a second. So I'm not going to read through these. I just want you to take a second and just to look at them. So questions such as that we've come up in the past about how do you survive on this amount of sleep, the lack of sleep, how do you manage your time in a quarter system? I imagine that some of you have come from a semester system. How do you address your professors? These are all things that we can get to in just a moment. So one of my favorite ones, where to get some good food. Why are books so expensive? Why are classes so early? Lots of questions. Probably this second one is going to be important for a lot of you. So how do I qualify as a TA? And Sanchet can really answer a lot of those questions. He's got a tremendous amount of experience himself. Questions such as, what happens if no one understands me, or I don't understand other people? What happens if I don't meet new friends? These are all very genuine and very important parts of being an international graduate student here at UCSD. And I guess really the big thing that I would really love to get part to you is that you're not alone in this. There is a dedicated community here to support you through this. So tips and resources. At the MVP, you have to excuse us that we're a very cleanly bunch here, and there's a Hoover vacuum cleaner in the background going along, but this is the joys of webinaring. You'll have a beautiful, clean campus to come to because of it. What happens if your faculty are not replying to you? The question would be, go to office hours. Office hours, our faculty are incredibly welcoming, and they have very clear policies about. They really want you to feel welcome here. There's lots of tips, and just the last point is the place that I'm attached to, and it's called the Teaching and Learning Commons. So any kind of academic assistance that you need, we can assist you with that as well. When you come here, you'll see a large house on the kind of the corner of one of the large engineering buildings. This was actually a piece of art. It's part of the Stewart collection here. There's a beautiful art collection here on campus. It's called the Falling Star, and it was completed by a South Korean artist, and it really looks at themes of displacement and kind of feeling out of place and out of sorts and out of time. So it's a fascinating art piece, and please feel free to visit it. You can visit it on Tuesdays and Thursdays. But the reason I mention it is that if you are feeling a little bit out of place here, there's lots of things to do. We live in an absolutely gorgeous part of the world here, and we've got wonderful things on your doorstep to look at. So just as a quick kind of bit of interactive, just to kind of bring you back on board, I would just like to ask you, once again, you're back on that Mentimeter. If you could go ahead and go back onto your Mentimeter and just give me a quick idea about choose an image that stands out for you on this one. So I'll just give you a second to do that. Okay, so just bear with me for one moment so we can all see our... So just please take just a moment. So far, we're 100% sleepers. Okay. Coffee seems to be catching up a little bit. So food and friends is right up there as well. Studying is making its way into it. Great, great. And I think this is something to think about. And the reason, if I may, the reason why we like to do a little bit of activity, not only is to try to draw you in a little bit, but also these activities here are really for you to think about, okay, other people are thinking the same thing as you. All right. So when it comes to having conversations with some of your peers, when they come to campus, you're going to know that actually the student experience here at UCSD, the graduate student experience as an international, there's going to be some unified thought here as well. So looks like sleeping and eating is a basic human need at this point, which is great. So fantastic. Thank you so much for engaging with that. And we're actually going to move on in just a second here to like the final part, and just to share a couple of resources, and then we're going to bring Sanchit in to answer. I'm sure you've got a lot of questions here as we go. So this slide, if you just have a quick look at it, on the left-hand side, there's a symbol. This is what I mentioned earlier about the Teaching and Learning Commons. This organization has been set up to directly support students here at UCSD. So as you can see, there's a writing hub, there's an engaged teaching hub and experiential learning hub. Please come along, have a coffee with us, have a chat, and we'll be happy to help you out. Coffee and bagels is always a win, as you can see from your sleeping and eating. That will probably do both. And at the very bottom, it's something called CAPS, which is Counseling and Psychological Services. I've got some good friends of mine who work in there. They're the most incredible people, and they have really supported our student body here at UCSD. So I guess really I want to show you all of this to show you that you are definitely not alone. We are 100% there to support you, and we really value you being with us. And so some very final thoughts before we before we leave. There's always stuff that happens, right? The kind of genuinely about life. There's always things that occur, and we just want to once again kind of reassure you that we have a very strong support system, and we are very much looking forward to meeting you all in person. We're staring at a screen right now as you are, so we hope our next interactions will be a bit more personalized. So the very last thing I would like us to do is probably the most important thing, and that's really to hear from you. And so this is going to be the last Menti, the last the poll that we do today. So I just want to give you a couple of moments to do that. And so this is once again, you're back on that Menti. And if I could ask you to just go ahead, and this is a questions for our experts. So I'm going to introduce Sanchit right now, just to have a chat with you for a couple of minutes, and I'll be controlling the questions, and he'll be doing all the good fun stuff and answering as you go. So if you just want to take let's just call it a minute or so, just to start populating this final Menti. So once again, 3195 ATA. And if you have any questions for Sanchit, I'll please post them now, and we will ask anything that you would like. So we'll give you just a second.
So hello, everyone. Just as we wait for the questions to get populated, just wanted to give a brief sort of overview of grad school and what it's like. And as you saw, that our main objective with the earlier Mentimeters was to show you that you're not alone, and everybody's thinking about kind of the same things. And it is a little different from undergrad, being part of grad school, because the kind of people you meet come from diverse backgrounds, and in case of UCSD, from different nationalities, different cultures. So I would encourage you guys to go out and meet other people, talk to other people, and interact with them, not just to grow as a grad student, but just as a human. I find it enriching and rewarding, and it's kind of led me here now. And I would encourage you guys to do the same.
So we got a great question over here about time management and how many courses. So maybe we want to jump in that one first, Sanchit?
Okay, so most of you are going to be taking, let's say, grad courses. So let's just go with those. If you're taking 3 grad courses and doing some research, you should be just about comfortable. If you're taking 4, it starts to get a little heavy. If you're taking more than 4, I don't know how people do it, especially if you're also doing research. If you're only taking courses in a quarter, maybe you can pull off 5, but it's still pretty hard.
Great, thank you, Sanchit. Maybe this is a nice one. It's got I can see that you've all clued onto this. If you're liking a question, if you like it and you thumb it up, it will go to the top of my list, so we can kind of deal with it that way as well. But let's definitely get into a couple of these. So how could we get an RA TA position?
This is highly dependent on your status. So if you're a PhD student or a master's student, and the second condition is, do you have a TA requirement as part of your degree? if you have any sort of a TA requirement, I'd encourage you to go to talk to your department grad coordinator, and they can guide you through your department's process, because different departments have different processes. If you do not have one, then what you would have to do is talk to your department, apply for the TA position using the channels, but it is less likely for someone who doesn't have a requirement to get a TA position. However, if you're a PhD student and you're relying on TA for your stipend or your income, then it's more likely that you'll get that position.
Great. There's actually a question, this might be a Gabby question as well, but can I apply for Californian residency in my second year? Where are we at with that one? Yeah.
I don't, so for internationals, I'm not fully sure. I think if you're a domestic student out of California, yes, but I'm not 100% sure about international, so.
Yeah, so this is a really good question, one that comes up a lot. Any residency questions applying for California residency should be directed to the registrar's office. You can email them directly at residencedeputy@ucsd.edu. They're the only office on campus that is authorized to tell you if you are eligible to apply for California residency. It's something the International Students and Programs Office unfortunately can't assist with. So it is going to be the registrar's office, again, residencedeputy@ucsd.edu, and they can give you more information about that.
Okay, great question. Let's have a look here. So maybe I could jump in on this one. Is there any writing support for graduate and international students? And absolutely. So I mentioned earlier that I work for the Teaching and Learning Commons, and as part of the Teaching and Learning Commons, there is a writing hub. That writing hub provides support for undergraduate, graduate, and also for faculty as well. So that would be, so the answer is yes, and we'd love to see you there. This one, if I may quickly jump in here, I think this one's a really important one here. So how to build long-lasting connections.
The short answer is you have to just go out and meet people, but how to do that on campus and how to facilitate that. I'd encourage people, if you want to meet new people from different cultures, there is this interesting thing that happens every Friday called International Cafe. At noon, you get lunch, and each week showcases different countries, and you have the food from that country, and there will be a representative speaker, and they'll tell you all about that. So it's a great place to meet new people. Other than that, there are often events on campus, which I would encourage you guys to attend and meet new people. And that's really the only way you meet as many people as you can, and then hopefully you build some that last long.
Great. Thank you, Sanchit. And this next question is actually right up Sanchit's alley, because he's working directly with this one. So I'll put this up.
Okay, what are the resources available for communication skills improvement? So first of all, the Teaching and Learning Commons as a general hub works for the entire campus for all grad students, undergrads. So if you have any general inquiries and you want to work with someone, you can contact them. We have workshops there, which are specifically for if you want to work on your teaching skills, your presentation skills. If you're preparing for a talk, you can do that. You can get one-on-one advice with some experts as well. In addition to that, there are some drama classes and public speaking courses on campus, which I think is something like PDHE 25, which is a public speaking course offered by the drama department, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, there's the UC Toastmasters Club, which you could also look up for some public speaking skills. In short, there are a lot of resources on campus. And if you just walk into DLC, Teaching and Learning Commons, you can ask us more about it.
I can just make a small plug for the International Students and Programs Office. We actually also, if you're looking to improve your English oral fluency, communication as well, if that's one side you're looking at, we offer the English in Action Conversation Program. Applications are open right now, actually. So if you go to eia.ucsd.edu, you can be paired with an English-speaking member of the community, another student, a staff member, where you can meet on a weekly basis or whatever works best for your schedule, just to practice English conversation, just to improve your confidence in those areas if that's something of interest to you. So again, that's eia.ucsd.edu.
Okay, so we've got about maybe 1 or 2 minutes left, and I'm just looking through these questions, and a lot of them, I don't want to leave anyone out here. A lot of the questions have been maybe somewhat dealt with, and I just want to maybe give you an opportunity just for a second. If there are any last moment things that pop to mind, please kind of go ahead and add them. We'll try to maybe capture some of the parts that haven't been answered here. Okay, maybe this one seems to have gained a bit of traction. So, can I apply for a transfer to another UC in my second year master's? So,
I believe yes, but this is a specific, like there's nothing that's stopping us, but it's not the most common route. So if that is a strategy to go to a different UC, it is not going to be successful very often, but it is certainly something you can try.
Yeah, and I think that would be, if that is the case, you know, we'd have to maybe think kind of really deeply about, talk to your advisor, also get in touch with, I mean, we're all connected here amongst the UC, so, you know, there's lots of considerations, you know, what's going on with the course is going to be most appropriate. I mean, it would be really nice to try to think deeply about like what the next step is in terms of kind of further graduate, postdocs or going onto the job market. So there's kind of quite a few considerations to that. I'm sorry we haven't maybe answered it directly, but that would be a question to work directly with your advisor on, I think, here.
Yeah, and like Paul mentioned, it would definitely be more likely if you're a PhD student and you have a project that you would like to work on and that's a good fit for you. That is more likely than if you're a master's student who wants to transfer just to take some courses at a different UC.
So the final question maybe we could just jump in on right now is kind of best way to find companies that are connected to my degree. I'm not sure if that's something that we can talk a bit about.
So we have career fairs at UCSD in winter or spring quarter. I'm not 100% sure. I think there's both. It's a pretty big fair, which fills up the Price Center ballrooms. There's a huge line. So you basically line up, you go and try to find companies that you would like to work with and who are maybe looking for someone who fits your profile. So that is the most obvious, and it's set up so that grad students or master students can find job offers. But even outside of that, a lot of students apply online for summer internships or for OPT, which you could also do. So you could just look by yourself, and people are often successful because grad student internships are not the easiest, maybe not as in demand as job offers, but still they're not that hard to find on the market.
And we also have, part of the Teaching and Learning Commons, we have the Experiential Learning Hub, which deals, and the Academic Internship Hub, which deals a lot with that to assist you. So maybe the one final question, because we want to have some time to continue the conversation here. The final question we can maybe look at is, this is probably quite a functional one here. So how does it work with classes that you haven't enrolled in but want to take? Can you ask the lecturer?
So this one's pretty simple. If you're a PhD student, most departments really don't care what classes you take. So you just go talk to your department. If the class is in a different department, you talk to their department's grad coordinator, and they usually clear you for classes. It might be slightly different for master's students, but the thinking is you're a grad student, you know what you're doing. And so they will usually not stand in your way. The only exception is if the class is full and is like waitlisted and it's quite in demand, then you may have to ask the lecturer. You can always ask the lecturer to audit a class. But if a class is like not full and you don't want to take it for credit, you can just go and sit in the classes. You can find out where the lectures are held. So unless there are very restrictive conditions, you can almost always take a class that you want to take.
Brilliant. So thank you so much for those questions are extremely, extremely rich. And I hope that by also seeing your peers' questions that maybe has kind of got you thinking about some questions that either you had and were answered, or maybe that you didn't have and you want to take a bit further. So it's been a real pleasure to chat to you today. And like I said, we're here as a support for you, and we're very much looking forward to chatting to you. So don't go anywhere just yet. Maybe just grab a glass of water just for a second while we do a quick switch, and just leaves me to say thank you so much, and look forward to seeing you on campus. Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. Those are some really good questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Sanchit and Paul, for that wonderful presentation. Keep those questions coming. We will be online for a little bit afterward. If you have any questions, I can help direct you. Now we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Amanda Bravold from the Academic Integrity Office to go over that piece of the presentation.
Thank you, Gabby. So I apologize that my colleague Allison was actually supposed to be scheduled to present today, but she's out sick, so I'm taking over for her. As Gabby said, my name is Amanda Bravold. I'm the Assistant Director of the Academic Integrity Office, and I was also a graduate student here. So I have that background of having gone through the graduate experience here at UC San Diego. First of all, I want to tell you a little bit about the Academic Integrity Office here at UC San Diego. You're really lucky actually to be entering a university that has extremely rich resources for you when it comes to academic integrity. In fact, we were probably the 5th or 6th college or university in the world to have an independent academic integrity office and to offer such resources to our students and offer them guidance when it comes to professional and academic integrity on campus. So I think it's really important to know that you're entering a university that really is a leader in the world when it comes to this topic and has a lot to offer you. We have 7 full-time professional staff members working at our academic integrity office, as well as many student workers and dozens of peer educators who are here to support you, offer you any kind of guidance. We offer a wide array of educational programming and are available for consultations, both in your role as students and for those of you that might go on to be TAs. When you get to that role and you might want some education about how you can support integrity in your classes, I absolutely encourage you to get in touch with our office at that stage as well, and we're available for consultations. So the first thing that I want to talk about is, what do we mean by academic integrity? This is something that surely very many of you are familiar with the term. It's maybe used in different ways in different institutions in your home countries and your home institutions where you did your undergraduate work. But my guess is that almost all of you have heard either this term or a synonym of it pretty commonly throughout your previous schooling careers. But it's talked about in different ways in different institutions and in different classrooms. And so I really wanted to share the definition of integrity that we talk about here at UC San Diego, which comes from the Fundamental Values Project that the International Center for Academic Integrity undertook years ago. And so this is the definition that we use, which is the courage to be honest, respectful, responsible, fair, and trustworthy, even when it's difficult to do so. And I want to highlight a couple of things about this definition. Fundamentally, one of the things that I want you to notice about this definition is that it's about action. This definition of academic integrity makes the point that integrity is about what we do. It's about the actions we take. It's not just a characteristic that we have or don't have, and there's not anything we can do about it. But integrity is a matter of the choices we make and the actions that we take on a day-to-day basis. It's a matter of how we conduct ourselves. I think that's a really important thing for us to consider. And the other thing is that it breaks integrity down into these fundamental values: honesty, respect, responsibility, fairness, and trustworthiness. And so Paul was just talking to you about the culture here, the culture of UC San Diego. And these values are very much about, or a part of the culture of UC San Diego. These are values that we all fundamentally share as a community here at UC San Diego. And they're part of what makes our university so strong. And they're part of why it's so appealing for students to come here and earn degrees from UC San Diego. Why is that so appealing? Why do students want to come here and get degrees from UC San Diego? Because other people really respect our degrees. Other people really value our degrees. They see our degrees as trustworthy. And the reason that that's true is because we take integrity so seriously here. My graduate degree being from here means something and has helped me in my career because integrity is seen so valuable here. And it's really valuable for you. You're lucky to be here and to be earning a degree from UC San Diego, again, because we take integrity so seriously. And so I think it's important, again, when you're undertaking your trajectory here at UC San Diego and joining this community, to think about the role that each of these values plays throughout your time here and how much that contributes to the value of your work and how people will see you when you move on in the next step in your career. And then the last thing that I want to think about in this definition is the fact that it takes courage to uphold these values. It takes courage to be honest, respectful, responsible, fair, and trustworthy when it's difficult to be those things. Thinking again about that little Menti poll that we did first, when you all talked about some of those feelings that you might be having now when you're first beginning your graduate degree here at UC San Diego. That biggest word there was excited, but then some of the smaller words were things like nervous, stressed, pressured, overwhelmed. I definitely remember those feelings from my graduate career as well. It was one of the most exciting and fulfilling times in my life. Absolutely. I loved it. And I learned so much about my discipline and about myself. And I met some of the best people that are still the closest to me throughout my graduate career. But absolutely, there were times that I was overwhelmed and I faced tremendous pressure. And the reason that I'm pointing those things out now is not to focus on the feelings that maybe aren't as positive, but to point out that those times when we feel stressed and overwhelmed and under pressure are also times where sometimes it's hardest for us to uphold our values and to make those good decisions that are honest, respectful, responsible, fair, and trustworthy. We all know that as human beings, everybody struggles with these things sometimes. And so one of the best, most important things we can do when we're undertaking a new phase, whether it's something like beginning a grad program or a new phase in your career, is to recognize that there are going to be times where it's going to be challenging to make those good decisions. And to just think through ahead of time, what are you each going to do as individuals? What are we all going to do as a community so that those moments when it is challenging, we ensure that we make the good decisions and we still do things that align with our values. So I encourage each of you to make that a part of your preparation. As you're thinking about joining this community, be realistic about the fact that, yeah, it's going to be hard sometimes. It's going to be overwhelming sometimes. What are you going to do to prepare yourself so that you're going to make those good decisions even in those moments? Because again, it's also exciting. It's also going to be tremendously fulfilling. And making the good decisions that still align with those values is going to be what allows you to feel those positive feelings still fully and not be derailed by making a choice that's going to feel bad for you in the long run. Okay. Other motivations, connected to reasons why it might be so important to make those good decisions, remembering that you're a part of the UC San Diego community, that your choices affect many others. Sometimes working academically, working on a graduate career, writing a thesis, doing research, working on a master's or a PhD can feel kind of isolating. This came up again in your questions, how do you make connections to others? And I really encourage you to get involved in all those co-curricular opportunities we were talking about and reach out and meet others. But also just remembering that your choices do affect other people. Making the choice to align with those values is really important because of the impact that it has on you, but also because of the impact that it has on other people. Again, earning that degree in an honest and trustworthy way makes your degree worth more. It also makes the degrees of everyone around you worth more, including the degrees of people who came before you. Again, I have my degree from UC San Diego, so personally it matters to me that this university has a strong reputation. That's going to matter to everyone who's together on this webinar, everyone who's a part of your grad community. Really, your choices are going to impact all of those people. Additionally, they're going to impact your instructor. They're going to impact the entire UC San Diego community. And thinking about it, they're going to impact society at large. Students who do research and get degrees from UC San Diego go on to do really big, important things in the world and make a really large impact. So thinking about the way the things that you're going to do are going to affect your community and the world, sometimes it's hard to think of yourself that way. You might not feel like you're that important, but I can tell you our graduates really do go on to make a big difference in the world. And so thinking about what that's going to mean, I think is a really important and valuable part of your training as a new professional, really. Okay. So this is kind of just terminology definition. Again, this is a very diverse audience. Many of us are coming from different kinds of institutions that maybe use different kinds of terminology. Your undergraduate institution might have talked about this in different ways. And so just for clarification, you might hear words like academic integrity violation, academic misconduct, academic dishonesty, cheating. All of these things refer to the same thing. More or less, these all refer to acting without integrity or actions that go against that definition that I was just talking about. What are some examples of these kinds of behaviors? Completing an assignment with others when you aren't given permission to do so. So in some of your classes, you will be specifically asked to work together or to work in pairs. If you aren't asked to, if you're given an individual assessment and you're asked to work alone, then the expectation is that you work alone. Even if you're doing research, the expectation is if you're collaborating with others, they get credit. So anytime you are working collaboratively, anytime you get input from others, you always want to give credit. You always want to be transparent about it. And if you're not certain that that was allowed, if you're not explicitly told to work with others, then you always want to ask the professor for the class or a supervisor if it's appropriate for you to be collaborating with others. Other examples of academic integrity violations or a misconduct or cheating: using sources without citations, altering a graded exam and submitting it for regrading. Again, in many of your classes, you might take an examination or an assessment and then be given the opportunity, if you find an error, to submit that examination again for a second pass at grading. This is because your instructors, your TAs who are doing the grading know that maybe they can make errors, and so they want to give you the opportunity to point out any errors they might have made. But anytime that you have the opportunity to do that, if you make any alterations whatsoever on that exam before submitting it for a regrade, that would be considered academic misconduct or cheating. Other examples: copying another student's assignment, whether it's just a part of it or the whole thing, and submitting it as your own work. Copying an online quiz or assignment answers from the internet or from anyone. And this might include an example where maybe you'd find a past assignment or a past quiz. These are things, again, that are more typically going to come up earlier in your career when you're going through your coursework, either at the master's level or very early on in a PhD program. This is a big one: paying or asking anyone to create in part or completely an assignment for you. Again, whether it's paid or as a favor, anytime anyone other than you completes an assignment for you, that's going to be considered a very serious violation of academic integrity. And then translations as well. In general, translation is not going to be allowed on coursework. As you move on in your program, if you're talking about something that you're doing for research, if you're talking about something that you're submitting for a presentation, there are going to be department and program specific rules related to editing and translation. As a general rule in your coursework, translation is not going to be allowed. As you move throughout your program, as you advance in your program, there are some specific cases where editing and translation might be allowed in specific contexts, but a good rule of thumb is you always want to be transparent about it, and you always want to ask a supervisor or a professor if this is an appropriate context. Again, editing and translation is going to be limited, and you always want to be really sure that you're clear that the way you're using it and the context that you're using it in is allowed. So you always want to ask a lot of questions about that. As a general rule of thumb on just ordinary homework assignments, ordinary assignments in a class, that's not going to be allowed. And as you advance throughout your program, if that's a use that you want to do, you just want to ask the people in your program, what are our guidelines in this program for these things? As I said earlier, one of the really important ways to arm yourself to make these good decisions is to think ahead of time about the times it's going to be difficult. Because realistically, every human being, every person struggles with these issues. If there are challenges for all of us, there are times where it's more difficult. And so one of the really valuable things you can do is think ahead of time about what are going to be the things for me that make it particularly hard to act in ways that are honest, respectful, responsible, fair, and trustworthy. So I want to talk about some of the specific things that are challenges to acting with integrity. And these are going to sound pretty familiar, right? Pressure to succeed. That probably feels pretty real to everyone. My guess is that most of you are not, surprised by that. When we feel a lot of pressure to succeed at a certain level, to achieve a desired outcome, that can put a lot of pressure on us to get there no matter what the reason. So what do you do about that? Well, think through what it would mean to take a shortcut to reach that desired outcome. Would that actually feel like success for us? In the long run, would that count as success, or would it count against us? Are there consequences that would undermine that success? Thinking through those things ahead of time can increase the likelihood that we're going to choose the better option and do the right thing and avoid getting into trouble. Pressure due to time conflicts, conflicts of interest, things like that. Again, developing good strategies to just avoid those situations is one of the best things you can do for yourself. Develop good time management. not overwhelming yourself with taking too many classes or taking on too many commitments, having a good planner, making use of resources on campus that are going to help you develop those kinds of strategies so that you don't get into those sorts of last minute panics, being honest with your advisors and your grad coordinators and people in your program about what you're taking on and how you're managing all of your commitments is also a really, really good tool so that you don't get into those situations where you suddenly realize that you're overcommitted or you have a conflict of interest or you haven't managed your time well enough. Social pressure can also be a challenge to acting with integrity. So again, thinking about surrounding yourself with people who are going to help you be the kind of scholar and the kind of person that you want to be. And in some cases, maybe rehearsing the kinds of answers to pressures that you think you might face. If you do get into a situation where you're facing social pressure and you're not sure what to say, there are also resources on campus that you can consult with to think about how to approach that situation. You can talk to other faculty in your department, maybe talk to an advisor or grad coordinator or other people in your department. You can always come to the Academic Integrity Office and ask for a consultation from us. We have what's called an ombuds on this campus, which is just a neutral party that can help you deal with any potential conflicts of interest or anything. There are lots of resources on campus to help you think about dealing with any potentially sticky situations that might come up. Struggling with academics, struggling with language, or perhaps just having anxiety around these things that you might begin to struggle or you might not be as confident in your abilities as you would like to be. Again, these things can lead to pressure. Again, there are lots of resources on campus. The Commons that we talked about earlier in the presentation has a lot of tutoring support, a lot of resources on campus. We really encourage you to make use of all the support services that are available on campus to help you either gain confidence or gain skills to deal with any academic or language support that you might be struggling with. Personal stresses. Chances are, whether your program is only a year long or 2 years long, or whether you're in a PhD program, you might be here for 4 or 5 years or even longer. It's not unlikely that something personal will come up in your life. Realistically, we're whole human beings and other things come up besides just our programs. Anytime things like that happen, it adds extra stress to the achievement we expect of ourselves academically. So just being forward thinking about that, being realistic about the fact that when something comes up in our personal life, that puts extra stress on ourselves. That's going to be true. But if you know that ahead of time and you see it coming, you can kind of arm yourself to continue to be on top of things, continue to make good decisions, even when that happens. And importantly, know that you might need to reach out for help. Communicate to your professors, communicate to your faculty members, communicate to the support staff in your academic departments, and let them know. You don't necessarily have to go into a lot of detail. You can just let them know, hey, I've been sick, I might need some extensions, or something personal came up for me that I'm handling right now. As a result, I might need some accommodations. You don't have to tell them all the personal details that are going on. You can just let them know that something came up for you, and so you might need some help, whether it's a timeline extension or some other personal accommodation. The faculty and the support staff in your department are going to want to work with you, and they're going to want to help you out. If you communicate with them ahead of time about this thing that you're facing, they can really help you. And then finally, perceptions about a class or an instructor. There are likely times throughout your program where maybe you're going to have an instructor who you just don't quite click with. Maybe their communication style doesn't work as well for you. Or maybe there's a requirement for your program that you don't feel is as important or as relevant to you as some of the other requirements for your program. In those kinds of situations, it is more difficult to fulfill your responsibilities sometimes. It is more difficult to make decisions that uphold integrity sometimes. So again, just remembering, checking in with yourself about how are you going to motivate yourself to stay on track? How are you going to motivate yourself to stay true to your values and to make good decisions even in those conditions? Chances are, if it's just a class or an instructor that you're not really connecting with, it's 10 weeks. Get through it, right? Think about what your motivation is to stay on track, because that's important to who you are. And you want to make sure that you're the kind of scholar, you're the kind of student that you want to be, even when it's not an ideal circumstance. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what some of the consequences would be to acting without integrity. So here are some examples. It can affect your GPA or your ability to enroll in classes. You could fail an assignment or a course. You might face probation, suspension, or dismissal. And I want to highlight, especially with those top three, if any of those things happen to you, if you have cheating or academic misconduct and that affects your GPA or your ability to enroll, if you end up failing an assignment or a course, if you're facing probation, suspension, or dismissal, if any of those happen, you absolutely want to talk to the International Students and Programs Office. You want to talk to an international advisor as soon as possible, because these are all things that could affect your status. You also probably want to talk to an advisor in your department immediately, and an academic advisor as well, so that you can get advice from them. But you definitely also want to talk to an international advisor, since falling below a unit number or your GPA being impacted are also things that can affect your status. And then really importantly, and in the long term broadly, academic misconduct can affect what you learn. It can be a competitive environment in school, and sometimes we get focused on easier to measure outcomes like grade or time to degree or something like that. But in the end, you're trying to earn a degree, not just to get that piece of paper, but also to move on to whatever the next stage is. If you're in a master's program, maybe you're moving on to a PhD program, or if you're, whichever program you're in, you're probably preparing for a career. And so what you need in the end isn't just the degree, but you need the skills and the knowledge to move on to whatever the next step for you is. And so whatever your program is, taking those kinds of shortcuts might really undermine what that next step for you is. And I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind as well. And then the other thing is, of course, that the impact is on more than just you. The impact is on probably the students that are immediately involved, but also the other students in your program who might be working very hard for the same achievements in an honest way. The impact might be on your program because it might affect the reputation of your program and the ability of other students in your programs to be seen in a light that is favorable and fair and honest to them. And it affects, the professor and other people as well as the reputation of the university overall. So I think it's important to keep in mind those other sort of broad-based impacts as well. And then maybe finally, I think the most important thing to keep in mind is that this is achievable. This is possible. I've said several times that it can be a struggle to uphold these values all the time, that really everyone throughout their life, it's sort of a lifelong process to think about how to act in ways that are respectful, responsible, honest, fair, and trustworthy, that it takes courage and it can be difficult to do so. And that's absolutely true. I know it's absolutely a struggle for all of us. And every time we're in a new context, we have to kind of think it through and learn it again. But that doesn't mean it's not possible. It absolutely is. You wouldn't be here, you wouldn't be coming to a graduate program at UC San Diego if you weren't an excellent student. UC San Diego is a competitive school, and the fact that you're entering this program really speaks extremely highly of your qualifications. And so you absolutely can excel with integrity here at UC San Diego. It takes a little bit of thought, it takes a little bit of preparation, but it's absolutely achievable. And the university has a lot of resources here to help you along that path, because it's something that is so valuable and so important to us. It's so fundamental to the mission of the university and what we care so much about. And so I want to give you some tips on how to make sure that you hit that mark and meet that goal. Number one, just make sure you know the rules and standards. Read the assignment instructions, read the syllabus when you're taking classes. When you're doing research, ask the principal instructors, ask the instructors in charge of your labs, ask your advisor who you're writing your thesis under, what are the standards, what are the expectations, how should I handle this kinds of situation. Make sure that you familiarize yourself with anything that is a rule or an expectation or a norm or a standard. They're often written out and you can read the policies, but sometimes they're not. Sometimes you actually have to have conversations and you have to talk to the faculty advisors or the people in charge and just familiarize yourself with what the policies are. Think about why it matters also. Sometimes it's tempting for students or even just people new to a profession or that are inexperienced with an area to get very concerned with the technical matters. We see this a lot, for example, with citation and plagiarism, that students will often ask a lot of questions about how do I do the citation? How do I do the punctuation of it? And the truth of the matter is you can always look that up. There'll always be resources there to help you with the sort of technical parts of it. What's really important is to learn, why does that matter? Why do we cite our sources when we write papers? And if I just said that and you were like, I actually don't know that. Well, that's a great thing to think about and ask why. Go to somebody who works in your field and say, why is it important that we cite our sources when we write papers in this field, in this discipline? And make sure you understand why that practice is in place. Because in the end, that's going to be the thing that allows you to handle new and novel situations that come up. There's always going to be some new situation. There's always going to be something that hasn't been covered by some bullet pointed list of situations. So you've really got to understand the reason behind it. The reason behind what are the values at play? Why is this policy in place? And that's what's going to allow you to be able to choose to do the right thing in all of the situations. Some technical list isn't really going to cut it. You've got to understand the why behind it. Also, reduce your temptations. Think about the kinds of situations that might make it particularly difficult for you to make good choices and reduce them. So great, easy example, manage your time well. In general, when we're under deadline and we haven't slept enough and it's 2 or 3 in the morning and we have to turn something in the next morning, that is a situation where almost none of us make very good decisions. So try to avoid those kinds of situations. Plan ahead. Break down big assignments into many small chunks. Give yourself smaller deadlines to manage your time well. Use the resources on campus. Pay attention to when the situations are going to happen that are going to make it really challenging for you, and avoid those. Have a method for recognizing and making ethical decisions. So this is something that probably not many of us get a lot of training on. I know I didn't get a lot of training on it until I was already fully an adult, but learn to recognize, when is there a situation where I'm facing an ethical dilemma? A good quick trigger might be where you don't know what to do and you feel like you're being pulled in multiple directions, or more than one thing feels like it's right, and you might feel kind of trapped. Like, this feels like it's right on one hand, this feels like it's right on the one hand. Learn to key into that. Learn to key into when those fundamental values I talked about might be at stake. When it feels like this is a question of respect or responsibility or fairness or trustworthiness or honesty. So learn to notice those things and become sensitive to them, and then develop a method for making good ethical decisions. Again, a good little trick is just to pause for a moment, take a breath, and tell yourself, I probably have more options than I realize. Since these are stressful situations for most of us, we often feel trapped and like there's not a lot of options we have. We can either do one thing or maybe 2 things, and maybe neither of those are the best option. But if we pause, sometimes even just for 30 seconds, sometimes for a minute or 2, sometimes for longer if it's a complicated situation, we might realize we have more options than we thought. So give yourself that moment to pause, think about everything that's actually in your power to do, and then you can give yourself a moment to evaluate and say, what are the values at stake really with each of these options? What are likely going to be the consequences, even in the long term, even for people other than me? And let yourself choose which option you think is the best one. Another good tip is to seek help and use resources. We've given you a lot of resources in this webinar. There's a lot of other resources on campus. Ask for help, and ask for help early. Try not to wait until you feel like really panicked or really overwhelmed or things are really spinning out of control, but anticipate what are going to be the sticking points for you. Or as soon as you start to feel like maybe this is something that I could really use some assistance with, again, reach out to those people who are going to be support staff on campus. Make use of the Commons, make use of your grad coordinator, talk to your instructional teams, let them know what you're struggling with, or let them know what you think even you could just do a little better on. You could develop yourself a little bit. People at UC San Diego really love being helpful. We love connecting our students with resources. We love letting them know what we think could help assist them and let them grow. And so really let us know, let staff know, let faculty know where you think you could use a little bit of help. And we're going to connect you with the people on campus who can help you out with that. And then finally, do remember that if you do misstep, if you feel like you haven't handled a situation ideally, that's an opportunity to learn. That's something that happens, that this is a lifelong process of learning how to do better with respect to all of these choices. And when we do make a mistake, it's a matter of looking at it and saying, okay, I didn't handle that situation the way that I should have this time. I want to make sure that I do better next time. What is my new strategy going to be to make sure that next time I make a better choice? All right, so here are some resources that we want to make sure that you know that you have available to you. Number one, the Academic Integrity Office. Like I said, we have 7 full-time professional staff and many student workers and dozens of student volunteers. And we are on hand to help you, to consult with any sticky situations where you're not sure how to handle them, to just help you get familiar with process and policy in the office. We also offer numerous educational workshops and seminars, and we do presentations. Also, when you get to this, keep in mind this is true for you in your role as a student, and also for those of you who might be working as TAs, if you would like consultation in your instructional role, absolutely reach out to our office and we can help consult with you about how you can be a resource for integrity in your classroom, whether it's from the way you design assessments and assignments to grading to thinking about talking to your students, any of that, please reach out to us and we can help you. Your professor and your TA, excellent resources. It's just a good idea to develop relationships with your professors and your TAs. This is especially crucial for graduate students. You will just have a better time here. You will learn more, and it's really important to your professional development. This is one of the key differences between being an undergraduate and being a graduate student is the relationships that you will develop with your professors and with your TAs. Absolutely crucial that you get to know them. Ask any questions about anything that you don't understand, whether it's course material or policies in the classes. Really, really crucial. We've talked about the Commons quite a bit. There's many different parts of the Commons, whether it's the Writing Hub, tutoring and study programs. They also offer numerous workshops. Check out their webpage. There's a lot of information there. There's also academic advising available. You want to make sure that you're on track throughout your program, that you understand what your time to degree expectations are, and also what options that you have available to stay on track. We talked a little bit about counseling and psychological services in the previous part of the webinar. I also wanted to mention that counseling and psychological services also offers workshops. They offer workshops specifically for graduate students, and they also offer workshops that have to do with things like dealing with anxiety, dealing with time pressures, all different kinds of things. Check out their website also. There's a lot of different resources there. And of course, the International Students and Programs Office is an excellent resource for you as well. Now I'll turn it over to Gabby.
Thank you so much, Amanda. I really, really appreciate it. Providing all these great resources for our students. Here are their details as well. If you want to connect with the Academic Integrity Office, they are here to assist. We are wrapping up the workshop. I know we're over time a little bit, so I just want to make sure, I want to be sensitive to your time, just go over a few reminders here as we finish up. So if you could please, at the end of this workshop, you should automatically be sent an email to answer a very, very short survey about this workshop. Please go ahead and fill this out. This really helps us understand what your needs are and how we can improve the information that we give to you as well. A couple of reminders here. If you haven't done so already, please check out our coffee hours at ISPO. Our last one is tomorrow morning. These are from 9:30 to 11:30 a.m. This is a great way to meet fellow students, ISPO staff, learn about different resources. It's free coffee, free pastries. You can write a postcard home and we will send it for you. So really, really nice way to meet and mingle with your fellow students. Finally, we have our Out of the Woods event that is happening on October 17th. We will be sending you an email about this shortly. This is a way to check in with you about a month after orientation, see how you're settling into life here at UCSD. There will be various different campus resources available there on hand to answer questions that you might have that might crop up over the next 3 to 4 weeks as you settle in. Also, there will be free food, games, all sorts of different social activities to connect with one another. So take a look at that email once it comes through and register as soon as you can. That is it for our webinar. Thank you so much, all of you, for your time today. We hope to see you in our last day of orientation sessions tomorrow. If not, please stop by the International Students and Programs Office. We would love to connect with you and help you in any way we can. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Watch more webinars and attend in-person workshops by visiting iwebinars.ucsd.edu.